Hello. Today we're doing our second in the video series on Quickbreads. We're doing the creaming method.
Creaming method!
So this is going to be an example of the creaming method as it's used for a Quickbread such as a muffin, but you can apply the same techniques when you're making like your chocolate chip cookies, sugar cookies, and we can use this same technique when it's Christmas time. So we pre-measured our ingredients in the kitchen, but I will go through the process of how we did it. So right now in my mixer I have my first three ingredients. Your butter at room temperature, not melted, not ice cold. That's very important in the creaming method. If it's not at room temperature, your sugar is not going to mix in properly in the beginning. I have 115 grams of that, 170 grams of granulated sugar, and a teaspoon of vanilla. That'd be good to plug it in. And my plug doesn't work. Awesome.
There's a outlet behind you.
There we are now.
So we will mix this. If you look up the creaming method, and I tell students when they're learning this, they can do it by sound. So you'll hear the sugar's a little gritty in the beginning. You'll look as it mixes, it'll get light and fluffy, and you'll see the sugar actually dissolving. That generally takes 1 to 2 minutes. While that's going, I'm going to explain the rest of our ingredients and the process. So we have 2 eggs. They'll be put in one at a time. That helps disperse the other ingredients. We have chocolate melted, and it's melted, it's not too hot, it's room temperature. After that, we have a mix of our dry ingredients that we're going to sift. It's all-purpose flour, 250 grams. It should be pastry flour, but we don't have any right now. All-purpose will work the same. We have 50 grams of cocoa powder, 10 grams of baking soda, and a pinch of salt. They actually found me measuring spoons that had a pinch on it, so that was good. And then we have some milk. And then this is you can use sour cream or buttermilk. We're using buttermilk. So it's starting to look the way it should. It's getting light and fluffy. And like I said, this takes a little time to figure out the proper doneness of the creaming method. If you don't incorporate the sugar enough at this point, you're going to have issues with it mixing in with the rest of the way. So we look good right there. As I said, we're going to do eggs one at a time. So with our other stuff, you're going to whip it high like we did in some of the other ones. This, we're just going to put it on just so the eggs blend in. So we'll look at it once the first egg blends in, and at that point, you can take it, turn your mixer off, blend everything down. So this will really help incorporate those eggs. You don't want to get the speed too high at this point. Just barely mixing them in. Making sure, a lot of times I'll tell students, break your eggs open in a different spot so we don't get shells in. I've been pretty good not getting shells in there. And this is for our demonstration purposes. So after that, that's mixed in. We're going to add our chocolate. So you'll start to see, if I could show you this, the students will see it in person when they're making it. It doesn't really look that blended in. As we start to add the rest of our ingredients, it'll look like a nice chocolate muffin batter. And this is a good one. This is those chocolate lovers. It has melted chocolate and chocolate chips at the end. So this is one of my favorite ones. It's kind of like dessert for breakfast.
Yummy.
That's a good question. I looked up some of them. This one was actually not a King Arthur recipe. This was one that I kind of searched through, and this was one that said the best muffins ever, I believe. So they are all linked to our account. I'll get you the information for that. So like I said, at this point, we're just blending it where stuff goes in. At next step up, you want to sift all of your dry ingredients together. So we'll pop them in the sifter together. The purpose for that is, since there's only just a pinch of salt, that salt will disperse in through with the rest of the dry ingredients. If you sifted them one by one, you would probably have one muffin that tasted salty and one that probably didn't work the way it should, because as we discussed earlier, the salt will work with your other ingredients. So the baking powder and the salt in this one work together. You see I'm banging it, that'll get out all the ingredients, and you see everything is out of there. So our next step is we're going to combine all our liquid ingredients together. And this is important. Some recipes may do it differently. The majority of the creaming method, you'll add a little dry and you'll alternate it with the wet. That way it makes sure everything's dispersed through. So I'm going to add a little bit of my dry.
How much are you, a little bit at a time, like half the bowl?
Approximately a third of your ingredients. Yeah, so if you think like, you can do it more than that, but usually I'll do it in 3 stages. When you put your first dry in, it's going to start to combine with your butter and your sugar and the rest of your ingredients. So now it's starting to actually look like something. So once that's mixed in, we'll add some liquid. And then this is starting to bring all the dry off the bowl. All those first ingredients, your butter, eggs, and sugar, are all starting to combine in. And like I said, we don't want to, Quickbreads, we don't want to mix them too much. So there's another third, and if you look, there's a little bit left in the bowl. So I'll do about half of what's left in here. First thing we want to do, combine our dry together. I'll add my liquid. And then even with the second addition, it's really starting to look like a batter. So once the wet ingredients get mixed in, I add my last portion of the dry. So when we're putting the chocolate chips in at the end, how do you think we're going to put them in? Are we going to fill? Yes. Yes. Good, we're going to fold them in. So some people will throw them in the mixer. That tends to break them up, and we want those nice pieces of chocolate chips in there. So we're going to take them and we're going to fold them into the end. So that's another technique. I'll show you folding when we do that.
What's the consistency that we're shooting for? Like,
I will actually pull some out of the bowl when it's done and show you what we're shooting for. So my studio crew here right now, they did muffins already today. They're going to do a second muffin using the creaming methods, and then we're going to compare what the major difference is between the 2 methods. So that was a good question about the consistency. Like I said, we pretty much got our muffins out of the oven about 45 minutes ago. So you will see these definitely look a whole lot different than the first ones that we did. And normally what I'll do before I put the chocolate chips in, I'll just take my rubber spatula, bring everything together, and make sure we have a nice consistent batter. Everything's through. So if you look, definitely looks a little different than our first ones. And then as Jenna said, we're going to fold them in. People tend to, when they fold, do too much. When you're folding, you're just going back and forth with your spatula. Very easy. So I have them. I'm just folding them in. And that's our finished product. There's enough muffins, there's enough chocolate chips dispersed through where when you take a bite, there should be a chocolate chip in every bite. And that is our creaming method.
Yeah, muffin!